Hello everyone. As Julien just mentioned, my name is Olivier, and I've created a company called Lunabee. We do apps, mobile application, since 2009, and I'm actually leading the user experience at Lunabee. So the reason why I'm here today is to talk to you about retention and especially about this figure, 80%. You might not know what this is, but 80% is the percentage of applications that are downloaded on a mobile device and that are deleted after 0 use or 1 use. So you can understand that this 80% is actually a huge number. And this is a very serious problem that we have in the mobile application world, is retention, how to retain our users. But before getting to the point, I'd like to quickly introduce Lunabee and our story and what we've done. So at Lunabee, we started to develop application in 2009, and at that time, we started to work on a problem which is the password problem. You're probably all aware of the password problem. You all have dozens of passwords to remember. And what most people do actually with their passwords is they use the same password everywhere, which is a very risky way of dealing with this problem, because if your password gets hacked on any of the website, any of the service you use, then this is the key to all your digital life, and this is a real problem. So the way we deal with this password problem is with a tool called a password manager. And we released in 2009 our flagship application called oneSafe. This is a password manager. This is basically a safe that you have on your mobile phone, on your smartphone, that keeps for you all your passwords and that remembers different passwords for all the different services you use. And I can tell you, in 2009, when we started to develop this tool, digital security and password manager was really not a sexy subject. And as you can see, this is what a password manager looked like at that time. So this is not very sexy. And what we created is an app that looked like that. And we've been very successful with it. We had more than 1 million downloads in 130 countries all over the world. We've been featured by Apple on the top iTunes banner, you know, the place where every app developer wants to be. So we've been there many times. More recently, we've been featured as App of the Week by all the Starbucks in the US. So this created a huge amount of downloads for us. So long story short, we've been very successful with this app. And the reason why we've been very successful with this app, according to us, is that it is very easy to use, very sexy, and users actually loved it. And we had feedback such as, wow, your app is the sexiest app of my iPhone, which was not expected at all from digital security application, which is not really a sexy subject. So since then, we've been wondering how to recreate such a great user experience in an app. We try to understand what makes an app very user-friendly and what makes an app, and the next slide is in French, and this is on purpose, what makes an app a star du X. So what we felt is when you use an application, it's a very close relationship that you have with this application, and it's actually a little bit like the relationship you can have with a human being, actually. And we started with this hypothesis on our work, is that an app is like a human being. So how does it work between human beings? You have a first impression that has to be good, and this first impression should give you the will to learn more about this person and then to discover the little things about someone. So, and what creates this first impression that will give you the will to learn more about this app? So for us, we can summarize this in 3 very essential points. So the first one is when you meet someone, you have to feel that this someone is actually alive, is behaving naturally, and is interacting with you. And this is the same thing for an app, and I will detail what I mean by that. Then you have to, then the app or the person must be well-mannered, must be polite. And finally, it must be straight to the point, clear and concise. We all have the experience of when someone that we don't want to talk to on the phone calls us, and we don't want to pick the call because we know it's gonna last forever, and this person keeps on talking and talking and talking. And this is not at all what you want to do with an app. You want it to be straight to the point and then direct. So let's start by what I mean by alive for an application. What I mean by alive is the application must always respond to your gesture and to the most simple gesture, which is actually when you slide, when you scroll on your screen. The app must move all the time, and so that you can feel it's alive and you can feel it's ready for you to interact with. Okay. So let me give you an example of what I feel is very well done. So this is the iOS home screen that we all know. And when you slide the iOS home screen, actually something happens. Actually, you can see the search bar that appears, and it happens following exactly the gesture you are making. It happens in a very smooth way, and so that you, at no point in time, you can feel that your device is not ready to interact with you, because as soon as you start to touch it, as soon as you start the animation, then something is happening, and actually the icon starts to blur, and this is very important actually. And so a similar example from the Evernote application, well actually this is what you don't want to do, is typically this application, when you open it, Evernote, you start to scroll and nothing happens. It's like it's dead, and you can't really feel that the app is responding to your gesture. You know what I mean? So this is something that you don't want to do in the app. You don't want any screen not to respond to a very basic gesture that is scroll. So first rule to make an app alive is really try to respond on any screen to the user scroll, which is such a basic gesture. So make sure you do this. So talking about scroll, sometimes it might not be very easy. So this is our application oneSafe. As you can see all your passwords as little cards like that with images. And when you scroll to the list of passwords that you have, it has to be very, very, very smooth. Otherwise, if the app starts, and we see many applications on the stores right now, that when you start to scroll, it starts to lag, you know? So you can see the scroll is a bit like that. So even if it can be a lot of work, and in the case of oneSafe, I can tell you it's actually a lot of work to make sure that this scroll is very smooth, because we have to, because all the data obviously are encrypted. It's so we have to decrypt the data on the fly, to decrypt the image on the fly, and to make sure all of this is done within a fraction of time, which is less than actually 30 milliseconds, because you know the eye can see. I mean, we have to render 30 frames per second if we want to feel something which is smooth. So this is a lot of work, but I really think that it's worth it, because otherwise, if the app starts lagging, then you instantly feel that it's not human, it's not alive, and it's not behaving the way you want. And this is a lot of work if you manage to get to this point. And the rule number 2 I want to talk to you about is that if you start developing, there's a big debate around hybrid or native application going on right now. And if you go with hybrid applications, then you'll never manage to get to the point where your scroll is smooth enough. So rule number 2, if you want to make sure your app is behaving properly and smoothly, please go for native application and not hybrid application. Otherwise, in terms of performance, you will never get to this smooth scrolling or smooth animations. So those were two examples of what I meant by alive and two rules linked to this alive character of the application. Then let's talk about well-mannered application, polite application. And here I'd like to talk about something that we can see very, very often on the store. Those are applications, when you download them, you don't even have opened the application, you haven't tried it, and as soon as you open it, boom, you are interrupted by the application that's asking you whether you agree to receive notifications from this application at any time. And to me, this is something that you shouldn't do in your application. You shouldn't do this because it's a bit like when you meet someone for the first time, you ask the person, even before having spoken to the person, you ask her or him whether she can give you the key of her apartment or something like that. It's a very intrusive thing to ask. Can I send you notification at any point of the day, at any time of the night? So make sure if you ask the user if he wants to receive notifications from your application, make sure that you clearly explain the user first what's the value added for him and what he will get from being disturbed by your application at any point in time. And sometimes it gets even worse. In the case of this application called Lock Screen, which is in the top 20 of the App Store, by the way, in this case of this application, not only you get an interruption that asks you whether you want to receive notification from this app, but you receive another pop-up that tells you, hey, by the way, if you want to go and download my other app, which I made, which is on the store there, please go. So obviously, this is very intrusive, and this is really what you don't want to do in an application to make sure that you have a great user experience. So avoid interruptions when the user is starting to do something with your app. Please let the user do his stuff the way he wants and don't interrupt him. Then I'd like to talk to you about, still in the area of notifications, I'd like to talk to you about an experiment that we've made on the App Store a few months ago. So we had this problem with our app oneSafe. We realized that downloads were highly correlated to the number of reviews and ratings we had on the store. And the better the ratings, the more the downloads you get. So it's very important for every application developer to get many ratings on the store. So you will ask, typically, users to go and rate your app. So at one point in time, we've implemented something in our app that was basically asking the user, after 4 utilizations and for each version, there are many parameters you can set with this kind of tools, but at the end of the day, when the user connect to the application and look for a password, we were sometimes interrupting him, asking, hey, do you love oneSafe? And then if the user says, yes, I love oneSafe, then we bring the user to the App Store, asking him to put a review. And if the user says, no, I don't like oneSafe, then we drive the user to its email and ask him to give us some feedback and tell us how we could improve our application. So we did this, and we got many reviews out of this system. However, we felt at a point in time that it was not very user-friendly because it was interrupting the user. So I opened my oneSafe, I'm looking for a password. I'm a bit in a rush and whatever, and then boom, I get interrupted. So most users, what will they do when they see this pop-up, this interruption? They will just click cancel or OK, but they won't do the action later on. Or worse, they'll get very pissed because of this interruption. They were just looking for a password quickly, and we interrupted them. So that led us to implement another option, which is very, very simple, which is simply this small red tag here that indicates the user that, hey, there is something to do with something. But take your time, do it when you have the time. It was just indicating the user that there's something there. And then same thing, we drove the user to a page where we would ask him if he's happy or not with our application. And then if he's happy, boom, rating. If he's not happy, email. Same process exactly. But here it was not intrusive. It was just we suggested the user that there was something to do in the settings page of the application. And what's interesting now is to look at the results of those two different ways of dealing with ratings. So this is a chart describing the number of reviews we've got for app a long time. So in blue, those are the 5 stars reviews. In green, the 4 stars, and so on. And here, so in June, it was when we implemented the first option. And then 1 year after, we've implemented the second option. And as you can see, the number of review is more or less the same. When we've implemented the system, we've got more or less the same number of reviews. However, if you look at the quality of the ratings that we've got out of this, for the first, we've got an average rating of 4.7, and for the second, we've got an average rating of 4.9, which is actually much better. So here, what I want to tell you is that push can't be your default choice when you want to ask something to your users. You can't just use push by default because it's more efficient. The thing is, it interrupts the user. And the second thing is, as you saw, the results are not necessarily better when you use push. So finally, an app should be straight to the point to us, so concise, clear, simple. And here I want to talk a little bit about another story, which is when Apple released iOS 7, you know, they changed totally the way you have to design applications. So we switched from a very skeuomorphic kind of application that looked like reality to a much more flat design. So obviously, as our application was famous among our users, famous to be very sexy, or the user interface was, our users really liked the user interface, we had a lot of pressure to do something very nice to the users, and we spent a lot of time trying to come up with a new version that was as sexy as the first one. So so we had a simple problem. The application, the data model that we need to show to the user was something like we had category, where we stored different items, different passwords. Not only password, by the way, it can be any identifiers, social security numbers, whatever confidential information you have. So we had to deal with this kind of navigation. We had groups, and we had items within those groups. And what we did at that time really helped us is we had to come up with an animation that was a UI that was really great, animations that were really great, to switch from a screen where we had those categories to the screen where we had those items and so on. And what we did is we started to prototype animations using keynotes. So it's actually, if you don't know about this, I encourage you to try and use Keynote to prototype animations. There's a killer feature, which is called Magic Move. And you basically you draw a slide. So you can mock up a screen on a slide, and you put elements. And then if you can transition to another slide, and the similar elements will actually automatically transition from their position on the slide 1 to their position on the slide 2. And this will very easily create a custom animation, and you can prototype in 5 minutes many different animations. So those are examples of what we came up with when we tried to think of what should be the new user interface for oneSafe. So we came up with different ideas, different features, and whatever, and we came up with many ideas. And at the end of the day, what we went for was a very simple stuff that is, from a technical standpoint, a bit disappointed. Let me show you what we came up with at the end of the day. Yeah, it's that simple. After having tried many different kind of animations, screens, or whatever, because we wanted to impress our users. Finally, we went for a very, very simple animation. And actually, I think this is something important. When you talk about the user interface, you have to keep it as simple as you can and make sure that you are not trying to impress users with like very shiny animations or shiny stuff. So this is what we came up with. And same thing for when you open an item within your oneSafe, you can see the animation is very, very simple. But not that simple, actually. We tried many, many different combinations. So for this one, for example, we tried to zoom the whole page. We tried many different combinations. And at the end of the day, we went for the simplest thing that we could think of, and that was still very smooth. So my rule number 6 for animations, and to make sure that your app is simple enough, is basically too many pixels. If too many pixels are moving on a screen during an animation, then it means that this is too complicated. And usually, users will get bored of this animation. Last application I want to talk to you about is Biscuit Saga. So this is an app made by Milka. This is a game. And this so when you download this application, it's a free app. You download it, you really want to play with it. That's the point. And before you can play with this application, you go through an endless onboarding workflow, endless screens that will tell you about the application, the way it can connect in Bluetooth with other devices, and so on, and so on, and so on. And I wanted to show this because this is a typical example of what you don't want to do in your application. And your onboarding workflow with a screen that is a huge block of text in a font that you can hardly read, and where you have to scroll actually to get the full content. Just look at this screen, and according to you, how many users will have read what's written here? The answer is basically 0. So don't do this. And as a rule, when you design an application, I would say if you have a screen where you have an explanation that is more than 10 words, it means that this is too complicated. So what I want you to remember from this talk is that really an app, when you design an app, it's like a human being, and the relationship that users will have with your app is a bit like the relationship that users will have between them. And you expect it to behave properly, and you expect it to behave properly even more because it's like a projection of yourself. When you use an app, it's a bit like an extension of what you are, because you do so many things with applications right now. And this is the reason why it's a bit like a human being. And never forget that apps should be alive and natural, they should be well-mannered, and they should be straight to the point. And just to finish, I'd like to touch down on 2 things that we do at Lunabee to design great application. First thing is to prototype. I often have this question of, what tool should I use to prototype my application? So what we do at Lunabee is we use paper. Here again, that's the simplest solution that we found, and it works very well actually. So we use paper. So we have those templates where we designed 3 screens on each sheet, and then we use this with a simple paper and eraser to design our screens, and that works actually very, very well. Then if we need to, we can have a couple of high-fidelity mock-up to give the ambience of the application, to choose which font you want to use, or those kind of things. But at the end of the day, the structure of the app, the structure of the screens should be, we use this to design our screens. And then the second thing, I talked about this already earlier, but we do only native applications. And that's very important. And people will often say that, hybrid application, this is cheaper because I developed the app once and then it's compatible with all devices and so on. Well, actually, there are 2 kinds of devices that you need to be compatible with, iOS and Android devices. All the others, you can forget about them because they almost don't exist anymore. So it's only I develop it once to be compatible with two kind of devices. And then those Android and iOS are very different operating systems that you need to deal with. And at the end of the day, if you do two native applications, you can leverage all the capabilities of this system. You can build more powerful application. And in terms of performance as well, as I explained earlier, you can have very smooth things that you will never have with hybrid application. And this leads to much better user experience for user when you go for native application, and obviously to a much better retention. So that's it. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to reply to your questions if you have. So I don't know if you have any questions, please feel free.
Hi. On the well-mannered part, how would you think about I need to do an app which may request on some features to have your localization as geolocating, or to go through kind of a social network, which is pretty simple, but to know like who is attending a meeting or something. Is it something that you would ask for pretty soon in the app, or something that you would more try to make people be interested in the service, and then explain them that if they want to have the service, they will need to you know, give their information about that? How do you feel that consumers today are about that, giving that amount of information?
Okay, so the question is, you want to use the localization of the user, and you want to know whether it's better to ask for the permission to use this localization early or late in the process of using your app, right?
Yeah, this is that. Like, do I have to show what I can offer for them before asking, or can I ask like straight away?
Well, to me, it's very simple. You have to show the user the value added that he will get out of the app using your localization. So if you can explain it in a very simple sentence, like just a few words, if you can explain this value added to the user, then you can have it straight after explaining what's this value added. Otherwise, you can wait for your user to use this particular feature that require localization to ask him. Because when the user is ready to use this feature, it means that, okay, I understood the value added because I'm about to use this feature. So in this case, that might be the right moment to ask the user for the permission. And as for notifications, basically to me, the trade-off is when you want to send notification to user, it has to have an intrinsic value of being real-time. If you want to push some information to the user using notification, it has to, how to say this? There must be a value added of this notification being real-time. Otherwise, you can always find other ways of communicating with the user, such as the small tag with a number. Or
how do you test a user interface when you try something new? Is it in a lab? Do you only gather data from analytics or stuff like that?
Okay, so first thing, we try it for real ourselves, and we make it try to our colleagues. So, I mean, if I understand well, the question is, how do we know that the user interface is well done, right? So this is a difficult question. So yes, usually we try it among ourselves, and then we try it with the users of the application, doing small interviews. So we prototype the app, we prototype an animation, and then we show it and simply ask, how do you feel about doing this feature? Where would you do better, and those kind of things. And then if the question is if we do A/B testing on our features or those kind of things, we don't. We consider that when something is simple enough, then you feel it. I know it's not really an objective answer to your question, but it's like you can feel when you reach the simplest possible way of doing something in an app. And when you have this feeling, then it means that probably you're right. And this is more the way we do. So it's more experience that will tell you, yes, this time I nailed it. This is the simplest way I can do something.
Do you use any tools, SDKs and analytics, for instance, or the tools in your apps?
So we use Google Analytics mostly to measure the number of users, active users, daily users, and those kind of things. And then we try to get reviews from the users. And that's all the analytics tools we use. For the rest, actually, what we do is we try to encourage as much as possible feedback from the users. So there are many places within the app where they can send us email, where they can contact us, and so on. And we consider that important things about our app, important feedback, will naturally come to us, and it's going to be important to us because we'll get this feedback from many users. You know what I mean? It's like when you know you have to do something with your app because something is broken or not nicely done, you find you actually feel it because you get the feedback from the users, and they will tell you. When you read 10 times the same email from different users that tell you, hey, this thing is not well done, then you know it's not well done. So that's about it. We try to encourage our users to send us as much feedback as possible through emails. And for as per the SDK, we just use Google Analytics to measure our number of users, and then we obviously monitor very closely all the reviews on the stores. All right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. And see you soon.